What's up, guys? This is Doctor, and welcome to another episode of the FPL Fantasy. We have a different episode for you today. We usually do three questions that people think about, and we address them in our video. Today, however, we're bringing you the ultimate FPL team. Basically, if you have a wild card, or if we had a wild card, we built a team, the optimal team that you can go into for the last 4 game weeks before the World Cup. But before going into that team, Joe, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk about Wildcard. I'm ready to talk about, I guess, not really any of the additional questions because Holland is an option back on the table. So any question you have, the answer is Holland. So we already fixed those problems for you guys. But yes, I'm ready to do this. Game week 13. I'm still getting green arrows. Maybe I'll get back to that 17K eventually this season.
Yeah, and the reason we did this basically because if we go through the best optimal team, it will take us through the questions that most people are asking. Who do I get? Foden or Saka? We're going to discuss it because it's going to come naturally while we are building the team. Having said that, before building this team, Joe and I kind of did our separate teams, the optimal teams, and then we found the combination of players that we have, the same exact identical kind of. We had, I think, 8 exactly the same players for a starting 11, and then we are different in three. So we're going to discuss who's better, who's going to go for who in the next segment. Shall we get into it, Joe?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get these wild cards done.
So here on the screen right now, you see the goalkeeper. What do you think, Joe?
I think he's crushing it, really. I mean, he lost his starting spot, and now he's playing better than probably almost any other goalkeeper in the league for Chelsea. So I think it's an obvious choice. I think there could be some arguments for like the Everton boys, or I mean, I guess if you wanted to do it, Ward, since Ward finally decided how to make saves. But I think just play it safe and bring in Kepa.
Yeah, absolutely agree. When I built the team, I looked at Gawaita as a first choice, and then I looked at other, like let's say Ward, if you're really looking for the money to make your team. But I thought, why not take a punt? 4.5. Yes, his minutes might be a risk, but you can have Ward on the bench to cover those minutes in case he misses out for Mendy when Mendy is back. But it doesn't seem like it's like his place to lose. So
Hmm.
if he keeps keeping up those performances, yes, the fixtures are not the greatest, but he's known for his saves. He can get you a lot of save points. It's kind of a punt for me. For Joe, it's straightforward. Kepa's probably the best choice, but for me, it's probably like a fun punt to have in goalkeeper since there is no really someone who would get you the Allison points, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of a difference on our mentalities with our goalkeepers too. Is I love the dude that's going to get 300 saves in a game, and that's why I got Henderson. So Kepa seems like this period in the season's Henderson for me.
Exactly. And we move on to the defenders. We agreed upon the three defenders basically that we have in mind, which is Cancelo, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Trippier. Trippier, phenomenal season, clean sheet, bonus magnet, free kicks, potential attacking returns. He's basically the Trent Alexander-Arnold of the past couple of years, but we have the original Trent Alexander-Arnold there. Fixtures are there. He's on free kick. So if we know that he's going to start, he's going to be chasing basically the upside of Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Cancelo we basically cannot go without him in those fixtures. Joe?
Yeah, I think you basically covered Trippier and everything that he's about, the reason why to get him in. I know some people are jumping off of him. I don't think right now's the time for that. As far as Trent, yes, he's had a little bit of a rough start to the season, but as we saw with the last game week, he's starting to come back into himself a little bit again. He was on for 2 bonus points, if I remember right, for last week, which, I mean, hey, if he's not going to get attacking returns, but he gets a clean sheet and some bonus, I'll take that too. I'm not going to complain. And then Cancelo, he's kind of underperforming his numbers, very much like Trent, where he hasn't gotten necessarily all the attacking returns that I think most people anticipated on him getting. I think part of that has to do with the revamped, I say revamped, but really they brought in Holland, but that kind of changed a lot of loose ends that City had in their attack, so there isn't as much of a dependency on the defense to step it up on the attacking half. Regardless, like Trent, clean sheets, probably bonus points, the occasional attacking return. why not? Let's do it.
So here you can see the midfield. We both had those three players in our drafts, wildcard drafts, the optimal team drafts. Foden, Saka, and Martinelli. Martinelli provides ridiculous value. It seems like a season hold. Saka has the fixtures. He's finally getting those underlying stats into actual FPL points. And Foden is playing for a Man City who are coming for a vengeance. They are like a wounded wolf. They're coming to attack. They're coming to get their win. Funnily, I've been watching Brighton's manager and Veltman, who have been on the press conference, and they both kind of, in a way, they're giving this game more. Despite them saying like this game is just another game, we're not gonna change our style of play, but there's some sort of feel. It's like there's some sort of feeling that doom is coming from those two, Veltman and the manager of Brighton. So Foden, Saka, Martinelli. Joe?
Yeah, I think people are going to be extremely surprised that I agreed with Foden here. And really, the biggest thing is I have been harping on Twitter on Foden nonstop this whole season. Hey, if he decides to pass the ball, if he picks his head up, he will be an absolute baller. Well, the last couple game weeks that he's played, he's actually done that. He's passed it. He's picked his head up. He's not drilled it directly at the goalkeeper. So I'm more than happy to give him a shout. And that's really Foden's thing. I think right now he's what, the leading scorer for midfielders. So I can't see not going with him. And then that brings in Saka. So Saka seems like possibly for the most part he's on pens. The only thing that might pull him off is if Martinelli wins the pen. Martinelli might get his own penalties, but it seems like Saka's pretty cemented in that penalty role otherwise. And then he's also, now I love Martinelli and I think he's a great pick, but he's also outscored Martinelli the last 4 or 5 game weeks. So Saka's kind of coming into his own form also himself. And that puts the question on the table, Foden or Saka? The answer is both. If you don't have one, you're doing it wrong, especially if you're on a wild card. So there's your answer for that question. Tackled that one that isn't a Holland answer. And then Martinelli, like you said, probably a season-long keeper unless he has an injury or an extremely bad form dip, but he's just such a crucial part of the attack for Arsenal and really kind of is the piece that puts everything together. I can't see not going without him, especially on a wild card.
Yeah, and you absolutely raise a great point that you mentioned Foden or Saka. Some people have the choice of going for only one. I would go for Foden at the moment. They have the fixture, they're playing at home, they're rested. Arsenal just played in the Europa League versus PSV Eindhoven. So Foden for this week, I would try to get both. The question here comes in, I've seen it a lot on Twitter, should you do Zaha to Saka for a hit? I thought about it a lot. I wouldn't at the moment because I have the funds to do it as well. I have the funds to get both Foden and Saka, and I'm opting for Foden at the moment. For a hit, it doesn't make sense. For free, probably yes.
Yeah, I agree. Foden is the priority, but Saka is a close second.
Yeah. And moving on to the attack, the only player kind of we both agreed on is Erling Haaland. Shall we move on?
You know, I'm not sure he's actually proven himself. I'd like to sit down and have a 30-minute conversation on is he actually worth bringing in.
Let's move on. So, the 3 players that Joe and I kind of disagreed on, the first choice is Salah versus Kane. We went with the kind of the price point. So, if you bring Salah or Kane, this occupies the second premium in your team. I said Salah, Joe says Kane. Your argument, Joe?
I mean, we've seen Salah play this year. Let's be honest. I mean, he has players like Almiron that are now beating him on the season. If you told me that any season, up until Salah's retirement, Almiron would beat him at any point during a year in FPL, I would have laughed in your face and told you, you're drunk, go home. Kane, I believe, has had his second blank. I don't know. He still feels on form. I mean, you have one bad game. Okay, that's fine. The team as a whole, I feel like, was kind of lagging this last game week, so I wouldn't take it as this is what Spurs are. And don't get me wrong, I know it's your team, Doc. United did play well, and they kind of helped prevent that counterattack that Spurs really likes to do off of Kane or off of Son to the other. But not every team's going to be able to shut that down. They looked a little sluggish. I can't see not going for Kane if you're in this position here.
Yeah, I don't disagree. With my point of view with Salah, it's a 50-50 decision. The fixtures are very, very similar when it comes to the fixtures. So for me, this game week, Salah has the better fixture. It's as simple as that. Kane has the better fixture next game week where they play Bournemouth. So for me, it's a 50-50 decision. Salah has kind of the clean sheet point. He has an extra point for goals if he scores. So I would chase kind of this upside. There is not much into it because you're gonna captain Haaland anyway. So I would go with my gut in general. My gut is telling me stick with Salah, especially this week where they play the worst defense in the league. Then Kane plays the second worst defense in the league next game week. So it's a really 50-50 decision. And then they play each other in game week 15. So it's really a 50-50 decision, but I'm leaning towards Salah. You have the argument for Kane that he's cheaper to a certain extent. So you have that argument as well. If it gives you some upgrades elsewhere in your team, I would probably just go Kane. But if you have the wild card in your hand, I would probably just go Salah.
The one argument that I would say against Salah also that I just thought of because you said the worst defense is if Henderson has his hat on when he's playing, he's unstoppable. He crushed it this week without his hat. I think it was a fluke. If he puts that hat on and he's walking out on the field, he's gonna destroy every single shot that comes near him. He got both of his earlier penalty saves with a hat on, if I remember right. So I think we need a in the know for does Henderson have a hat? Did he bring one to the stadium this week?
I would also add for the argument of Salah, a pro tip. Liverpool's game is the early kickoff. And we usually get leaks before the deadline if Liverpool play the early kickoff. And Nunez is rumored that he's slightly injured. So if we get the leak that Salah is playing and Nunez is not playing, it's potentially Salah at striker. So that would totally make it, instead of 50-50, it will make it like 80-20 for me. If Salah plays striker, we get that leak. I'm even tempted to captain, which I will not. I'm still hurt from that game week. But yeah, like Salah striker, I would go for it. Moving on to the next, let's say, debate. We have Zaha versus Jesus. Joe chose Zaha. I chose Jesus. Joe, why Zaha?
Right now, I still have faith in Zaha. He's been fairly consistent throughout the season. I brought him in, 2 game weeks ago. He blanked the first one. He almost blanked this one, and then he scored at the end there. So he bought himself one more game week in my team, but I still think that he's a fairly viable option. He's got good fixtures. Yes, Jesus is on Arsenal. I believe he's 1 yellow card away from suspension right now. That's a little hairy. And there's a couple pieces that are in the Arsenal team that are 1 yellow card away. I think if one of them gets pulled, it creates a little instability in that team. I also was originally sold on Jesus at the beginning of the season. I'm not as sold now. I'd rather having a Saka Martinelli double up and then like Saliba in the back, who I know is on yellow card warning also, but just I don't know, I like their defensive look more than I am enticed by Jesus up top, and that's kind of my feel there.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't disagree with the points that you mentioned. Yes, I would be a bit wary of the fact that Jesus has 4 yellow cards, but that wouldn't stop me from getting him in. His upside is insane. They have the fixtures. He's very involved in the team. I think Jesus is just ahead of Zaha. If I had a wild card, I wouldn't do the transfer or take a hit to kind of change Zaha to Jesus by downgrading somewhere and upgrading elsewhere. But if I had a wild card, I would probably go for Jesus. Moving on to the last point of the wildcard optimal team, which is Almiron Solanke. Joe is going for Almiron. I'm going for Solanke. Joe, why Almiron?
Almiron, he's been making a case for himself literally since preseason started, right? And yes, these teams, they don't necessarily play the strongest teams in preseason. It's kind of a warm up to get into the actual season itself. Sometimes they'll play each other. Almiron crushed it in preseason. Now I understand. I don't care. That's 13 weeks ago. Game weeks ago. Almiron's still killing it during the season too. He's still a critical part of that Newcastle lineup. And I believe St. Maxim's still out, if I remember right. And I think that's really the only person that would possibly take any attacking returns off of Almiron, but he looks like a completely reinvented player. I think with Howe at the helm of the team, Almiron is comfortable. He's happy to be there. He's feeling his role and he understands what he needs to do, and it's simple to him now. And he's clearly playing like it. Now, Solanke, yes, that's your Bournemouth talisman. If there's an attacking return, he's like Mitrovic. If there's an attacking return, he's going to be on the end of it. How many attacking returns do you expect Bournemouth to get? How many attacking opportunities do you expect Bournemouth to get is really the question there. Where I look at Almiron and I'm like, okay, Trippier's deadly on free kicks, so he can put it on somebody's head. He can put the ball right on the spot for him. And Almiron needs to run in. He can cross the ball. Almiron's right there. You have Wilson up top, who, yes, he's a striker, but he's not unfamiliar with laying off the ball. And I think it's the biggest thing is he is performing and he looks new, fresh, like he's excited to play again. Where I think in past years it was kind of like, okay, that's, you know, a 4.5, a 5 million, whatever, bench fodder. We're going to leave him there and just ignore him the whole time. I don't think you can ignore him this season. He's looking too good for that, especially in a good Newcastle side that are only going to get better.
I don't disagree with any point that you mentioned. Like a head-to-head, Almiron will be a better choice, but it's also a structural reason. When you go Solanke, you can go Andreas as your, let's say, bench player. But when you go Almiron, you don't have this 4.5, 4.6 striker to occupy that position that can get off the bench for a couple of points for you. So it's kind of a structure. Also, Solanke has penalties, so kind of that sways it a bit for me. On the off chance that Bournemouth get a penalty, Solanke will take it and you're in the points. It's just great value. I don't expect Solanke to go on a hat-trick anytime soon, especially also this game week. As you're going to see later in my team reveal, I'm doubting, shall I bench him or shall I start him? So I don't disagree with any points that you mentioned. It's just for me, the choice was the structural reasons and the values there. Looking at the screen right now, here is Joe's team. Joe, how's your team and what are your transfers?
My team's perfect. You know it's perfect. It's always perfect. I've never made a mistake in my life. It's FPL that doesn't award me the points that I'm deserved. Right now, I am looking at the team, and Foden was my transfer for Trossard, which a lot of people were doing, but I thought of it first. No. I'm not claiming credit for that. But Foden, Son, Martinelli, Zaha, right across the middle there. Now that leaves me with a killer bench too, and this is something that, you know, I've run into quite often with the quality of team that I have. Is who cares about the goalkeeper? They're never going to play. Trippier, Thiago Silva, Rashford, right across my bench there. I'm tempted to bring in Trippier because I can definitely see him getting returns, and I can see the Spurs possibly not scoring, or giving up something kind of stupid from a cross or a free kick coming in, because that's my Spurs. But right now I have him on my first bench spot. Yeah, what do you think, Doc?
Well, regarding the bench, it's a bit annoying to have this bench. And I'm looking at your team, and I would probably start Rashford ahead of Solanke, and I would start Trippier ahead of Perisic.
Possibly.
I think Perisic, my opinion, Perisic will not start this game. I'm benching him as well, as you're going to see in the next, and I'm starting Trippier ahead of him as well in the team reveal. And I think there is more upside for Rashford than Solanke. So it's more likely that Rashford will score 2 goals than Solanke will score 2 goals versus West Ham away. That's my argument, basically. So there is more upside. But Solanke is on penalties. One penalty and he outscores Rashford. So, but West Ham are playing defensively well. So are Chelsea. So it's a 50-50, but I would start Rashford ahead of Solanke and Trippier ahead of Perisic. So that's my feedback. You should captain Henderson. I'm just kidding. Go for Haaland. And
Maybe.
yeah.
Well, those two things that you had mentioned, they were kind of things that I was, well, the Perisic one was one that I was thinking about. The Solanke one I'm not doing because I think Kepa's too good of a goalkeeper and Rashford still needs to find his feet a little bit. So maybe Perisic, Trippier, but I'm not saying for sure.
Sure. And let's move on to my team. I've already done the transfer. As you can see, I've done Trossard to Foden. Now, the 50-50 decision that I have is, shall I play Andreas or Solanke? And I will probably play Solanke. It's just safer, like I mentioned, for the penalties. I have this argument in my head. Who's more likely to score 2 goals this game week? Is it Fulham or is it Bournemouth? And Fulham are more likely to score 2 goals than Bournemouth versus West Ham away, because West Ham are a better defense than Leeds. Leeds are playing very well this season, especially defensively. They look more like a team, let's say. But Solanke is more involved. If there is a goal for Bournemouth, probably assisted or scored by Solanke. Andreas, on the other hand, can come from Willian, can come from Reed, it can come from Mitrovic without an assist. So that's the one 50-50 decision I have. I'm contemplating taking a hit and taking out Perisic for Trent Alexander-Arnold. I don't think I will do it. I will think about it tonight and see how I feel about it. There is this upside chasing that I'm trying to do. Then it gives me a bit of benching headache, although Anderson will simply go out and Trent will come in. How much Trent is going to play, I don't know. So I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to find a way also to fit in Saka, as we discussed in the wildcard team, to fit in Saka or Jesus in the team. And I can't find really a nice way to do it. And I kind of want to keep this money in the bank in case I find a way to do it next game week because of injury, suspensions, or those kind of stuff. But for now, it's just Trossard to Foden done. Solanke will come in instead of Andrea.
Yeah, I think that's a good path to think of. My thoughts are, if you were going to get in Trent on a hit, this game week is probably the most viable to take a hit to try and recover those points. So if in the future you're planning on taking a hit for Trent to get him in, no? Okay. I would say that was my only thought. This game week would be the game week. If you're going to take a hit for Trent regardless, do it now because he can probably recoup that money. Yeah, I think that's kind of where my thoughts stand. Andreas Solanke, that thought I think is 100% up in the air because Andreas can definitely go and get 2 assists, but Solanke can also go and get 2 goals and an assist, or a goal and an assist. So yeah, it's a interesting thing that you have here. I would actually say I think you have a harder decision to make than me.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really a 50-50 decision. Before we wrap this up, press that subscribe button right now. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We're wrapping this up. Drop a thumbs up if you did. We're having a lot of views, but we would like to see those subscriptions going up. It's free. Joe, would you like to say goodbye to our audience?
Yeah. Everybody, like Doc said, don't forget to subscribe. We see about 80% of the people that land on our videos aren't subscribed. You could. That would be great. Also, one of you unsubscribed. You're in trouble with me. I don't know who, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to come to your YouTube page and tell you about it. But regardless, you got our wildcard team. You have our thoughts on our teams without doing a wildcard. I'm excited. Let's do it, everybody.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode.
See ya.
Peace.
Let's get these points.